Next, I'm pleased to welcome Her Excellency Shamma bint Sahel bin Faris al-Mazrui, UAE Minister of State for Youth Affairs, who will be speaking on the topic, the angels advocates in the climate change narrative.
عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله يصبحكم بالخير. I think there's a slide. صح, sorry. It's going to be an interactive speech, meaning I've written two scenarios with two different scenarios of the global narrative, and you today are going to decide which one you get to experience and which one I will talk about. I hope that's a good deal. When we think about the commitment that the United Arab Emirates has made, along with many other countries around the globe, for achieving carbon neutrality, as the Minister Maryam mentioned, by 2050, there are only two possible outcomes for how our story might shape or unfold. We either make it or we don't. And behind me, we have two possible endings for our fight for the planet's story. One, I call it the nightmare, where we unfortunately disappoint our children and live with their contempt at our failure to look at our planet, and we keep denying science facts and figures, and we choose to do nothing about the climate and environmental crisis that faces us right now. That's one. The second is option two, which we call ecotopia, where our children will rejoice and celebrate us because we choose to save our planet, and we do everything we can to deal with the climate crisis and environmental crisis that is facing us. So now it's your turn to tell me which scenario you want to hear, and which narrative do you choose to engage in, and which portrait do you look forward to hearing and witnessing. So I'd love, raise your hands if you want to hear about ecotopia. It's very interesting that many of you didn't choose the nightmare. I was hoping that people would choose the nightmare, so I'd give you a teaser. Maybe later I'll speak about that. But let me go to ecotopia. So once upon a time, there was a generation of young people who lived in a relatively small globe floating in an infinite space. No matter how small this planet was, it was the only home they've ever been and ever known. This is where their parents, their grandparents, their ancestors have lived, where their childhood memories have flourished, and where their children are waiting to be made. However, their beloved planet was suffering from a disease that has raised its temperature to a very risky degree. In dark nights of summer, the heat wave temperatures would be as high as 50 degrees Celsius. Wildfires have created a major air pollution and put them under health crises. Windstorms have become more intense. Winter storms also have increased. Arctic ice is disappearing. Water sea levels are rising. Many beautiful cities are under the threat of a flood. They realize their planet has a disease. Soon enough, the generation of youth who live in that planet decided to look for a cure, for saving their planet meant saving themselves. Luckily, and unlike any other fictional story, the cure for this illness was at hand. They had a vaccination for it. However, the key to assessing it was looking deep into their hearts and finding the commitment to act on it. Once they realized how dear this planet is to them and how much they could offer to help, they made a heartfelt decision, and they made a vow to act now. And when I say they, I mean youth. I mean the 1.2 billion young people around the world who are between the ages of 15 to 35. I could also use the 4.2 billion people who are below the age of 35. So let's call them they. What did they do? They started by reading about the disease called the climate change, not COVID, and discussing it with everyone they knew. They started researching the cure. They shared what they learned with anyone who can help. Second, they started an army of frontliners to stop the disease, an army of 1.2 billion young people leading the other 7 billion people around the world. And of course, they started off by walking the talk. They paid attention to the food they ate. the commodities they consume, just like Minister Maryam maybe mentioned, the energy they utilize, and the cars they drive, and most importantly, the faith they carry at heart. They had a representative, i.e. a young person, at every decision-making table: government, private sector, UN, research councils, parliaments, schools, and universities. And they were there. They were listened to as young people. And they were consulted, and they promoted the health and well-being of their planet at every single decision-making level. They invested and investigated alternative sources of energy and promoted its usage to their communities at every opportunity. They disrupted the old ways of doing business with new business models that had their planet health at the top of their priority in every step of the way. Sooner or later, their communities were inspired by their passion, by their commitment, and they joined the army. They planted seeds of good deeds. And everywhere they went, they consumed less, they recycled more, they ate healthier, they switched to renewable resources of energy at every opportunity. Social enterprises they led replaced the old models that they had. Now, innovative systems that they led also made it possible for their economy to thrive while the planet was breathing fresh air. So day by day, year by year, act by act, their planet started recovering from this disease, and just in time for their children to make happy new memories and enjoy life of economic opportunity, prosperity, well-being, and good weather. And this is what young people realized, that they had much more power than they actually assumed. The power of hope combined with action, they realized that their potential is always bigger than the problem, and their potential is infinite. For that, they had a clear purpose. And yes, it was challenging living in this kind of planet, but every single challenge has unlocked potential, has unlocked superpowers that they never knew they possessed. These young people now know that such a huge responsibility they have on their shoulders, and they're willing to take it on to give their life a bigger meaning, and that they were not their circumstances. They are their own possibilities. So eventually, I hope I didn't bore you, but the fairy tale narrates that they all lived happily ever after. I know you're thinking this is an overly optimistic, fantasizing, dwelling scenario, but that's why it's called the angel's advocate, and please allow me to disagree with you that this is not overly optimistic. Not that there's something wrong with optimism, but when combined with action, this is very possible, and this fairy tale can become a possibility. And that's not just my hopeful opinion. That's what the science says. If we do everything we can to deal with the climate and environmental crisis in the same way this fairy tale where young people dealt with this disease, by 2100, global temperatures will rise by just 1.5 degrees Celsius at the end of the century. Fossil fuels will be replaced by clean, safe, renewable energy. Over 1 trillion trees will be planted. Cities are going to be reconstructed to provide excellent public transport and many vibrant green open spaces. Many buildings are going to have green rooftops to cool their city and make it a more pleasant place to live. High-speed electric trains going over 300 miles per hour will link the major cities of our world. New technologies will make virtual meetings even feel so real that they will become the new normal, greatly reducing business travel. We are halfway already there. Pandemics of the early 21st century will shift global diets to be much more vegetable-based and helping us all to improve everyone's health. I think we all started on that already. Finally, these young people will think that the technological difficulties of making fusion energy work have been resolved, providing unlimited clean energy for the 22nd century. So if this is the world that you want, then join me to be the angel's advocate. I think there's so many devil advocates in this world, especially nowadays. Everyone is just looking at the problems rather than the possibilities that can unfold. And if you choose this scenario, you already chose it. You have made an active decision to see this fairy tale happening. And now all you need to do as youth is act on your decision. For your decision will hold so many different choices. And these choices will withhold so much meaning until you put them to work, until this higher energy of moving forward manifests. To be honest, those who deny climate change remain a minority, initially, because denying climate change is tantamount to saying you don't believe in gravity. And the science of climate change is not a belief. It's not a religion. It's not a political ideology. It presents facts that are measurable, that are identifiable and verifiable, just like gravity exerts its force on all of us. Whether we believe it or not, that's people's choices. But climate change is already affecting us all, no matter where we are born or where we live. So most people concerned about our planet's future, they are, and all of us are. Yet they take no action because they don't know what to do. And they feel like, what should I do? It's much easier for me not to think about climate change because it's scary, it's overwhelming. Or perhaps because I lost confidence in what can I do to address this. And I think this is a battle facing so many people. So many people believe they're not only paralyzed, but that they can't do anything. And yes, it's dangerous, it's common, but it's very powerful for us to take action to make it simple and go on each of our journeys, understanding our role in this story. And if the narrative of nightmare, sorry, it's not behind me, but if the narrative of nightmare prevails, if you want to take a sneak peek at that nightmare scenario, and I'll give you a trailer. 1, by 2100, global temperatures will rise over 4 degrees Celsius by the end of the 21st century. Heat wave with temperatures as high as 50 degrees Celsius will be common. Working outside is going to be physiologically impossible due to the increased heat and humidity. Wildfire rage across all the Mediterranean, Sub-Saharan Africa, Australia, Canada, Central America, basically all of our world is going to be covered in wildfires, creating major air pollution and also human health crises. 3.5 billion people will live in areas where water demand is going to be greater than water availability. An extra 1.5 billion people are water stressed compared to 2020. Large areas of the world will become unsuited for agriculture due to the lack of rainfall. Food will become so expensive, and to be honest, famines are going to be commonplace. Sea level are going to rise so much. Major cities are going to be flooded, uninhabitable, and big geographic areas of each continent is going to be just flooded. No one is going to be safe. Strong tropical cyclones. I can continue and continue, but the nightmare is going to scare you. Anyone who remotely is excited about living in such a world? Do you know anyone? I don't think so. And this is where Youth for Sustainability can have a huge, huge role. It's the global platform that brings together young leaders like you guys to engage with and educate other young people on sustainable development, building your skills and rooting all these youth in values such as adaptability and resilience. And most importantly, restoring the majority's faith that climate change can be reversed. For one person's acting is helpful, but 8 billion people acting every day to cure the planet is an army for change. You are the frontliners for this environment and for this disease. Young people can restore hope, advocate for action by walking the talk themselves and being present at every decision-making table. Get involved in STEM, in social enterprise, which can offer infinite possibilities for creating a new normal for our planet and rehearsing new coping behaviors for our world, action by action, because no one in their right mind would choose a nightmare or raw fear or sleep terrors over an ecotopia. Thank you very much.